Hello and welcome to another episode of the Small Agency Talk Show. I am Chip Griffin, the founder of SAGA, the Small Agency Growth Alliance. And I am very happy to have with me Brad Farris of Anchor Advisors, a regular panelist here, and one of our newest, hopefully regulars, Huyse of Zoetica Media. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. We've only got 30 minutes, so somehow we're just going to have to contain ourselves to that amount of time. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun over the next half hour. We're going to be talking about year end, year ahead, because it's November. I mean, it's really hard to believe that we're already there. And so it's time to start thinking about those important things. If you're watching right now and you have questions that you'd like us to answer, or if you've got comments on the things we're talking about, feel free to use the chat box on whatever platform you're watching on, and we will be happy to try to incorporate them into our discussion. But so with that, we were talking before the show started about some of the things you need to be thinking about for year end, year ahead. And I think one of the key things to think about is something that maybe some of our listeners aren't doing, which is, what do you stop doing at the end of the year? We all start thinking about what are our new plans for 2022, but what are we going to stop doing? And I think that's a key concept. So how do you, as you're working with clients or you're looking at your own business, how do you think about those things that you want to stop doing, and how does that fit into your planning? And Cammie, we'll start with you.
Okay. So I was like, I'm going to let Brad go. So yeah, that's all good. That's what I'm going to stop doing. I'm going to stop talking so much.
Sure you are.
Thing. That's my first thing. So yeah, no, I really think that stopping is such an important part of actually being successful. So like, you know, as you look at what you're going to do, I was just saying, me and one of my colleagues are stopping a project that we've been working on for a couple of years. We stopped doing different shows or podcasts or whatever. But, you know, as you're going through your marketing, like what you're going to market yourself specifically for your marketing for your own agency, because I mean, we always talk about our own clients, right? We're really cool with like getting in there and telling them what to do. But what about our marketing? And I do think that sometimes as agency owners, we take on just a little bit too much.
No.
We take on just a little bit too much, just teeny. So that's one of the things I would look at first is what's working, what's not, what are your new ideas, and how do you make it? So that's my first volley on that one. Brad?
It's a great kickoff because I was just looking at a marketing plan with an agency owner this week. And the plan that he came to me with had like 11 different tactics on it. And my first comment was, wow, that's a lot. You know, what do you think if you could only do one thing? What would you do? And he had an easy answer. Oh, it would be email. Email would be the one thing that I would do. And I said, okay, well, if you could only do three things, what would you do? He's like, email and partnerships and webinars. I'm like, let's just start there. How about we just stop at those three things and let all the rest of that go? Because, you know, the whole 80-20 thing, 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. What if we just start with that 20% of effort and let a bunch of other stuff go? Mm-hmm. And for me, a key signal that something needs to go is if I find myself procrastinating to get it done, or if it's one of those things that's taking a lot of energy from me to do it. That's a signal to me that maybe I just need to let that go. That it's not producing results. If it was producing results, I'd be excited about doing it. I wouldn't be procrastinating.
Right. I think one of the challenges is that there's this myth of sunk cost, right? And so a lot of times I'll be talking with someone who says, well, you know, I've invested so much time in getting this podcast off the ground or getting this webinar series off the ground. I feel like I'm committed to it and I need to stick with it. And maybe, I mean, you don't want to give up too soon, right? You know, there's something to be said for not just abandoning things left and right. But at the same time, the whole idea of sunk cost is crazy because why keep throwing good money after bad or good time after bad if it's not what you want to be doing, if it's not being successful? So don't fall into that trap, I would say, as you're starting to think about what to stop.
I love that you say that, because here's the thing I would say too. So just adding on to that is that if you feel it's a sunk cost and you're kind of thinking you're in that mindset, the best thing to do is sit down and think about all the things you learned from it, so that you can take those pieces on into the next thing that you do. So it's not sunk costs because you've learned and you have data, whatever that is, you know, either like hard data, like say you're doing Facebook ads or something, you have data Like, and you can use that to do the next thing better.
I love that, Cami. That's really brilliant.
Yeah, and I think also thinking about, okay, as you're looking at these things, think about the amount of time that they take versus the return that they're giving you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we don't do that either. And return doesn't always have to be in dollars and cents,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's this idea, I think, that I have to get a certain return on my investment, and I'm going to calculate it down to the dollar. And particularly these days with digital everything, you can sort of kind of do that. But there's value sometimes to the things that you're doing that go beyond the literal dollars and cents. So shows like this, right? I mean, this show itself does not directly generate revenue for any of us, but it's still worthwhile to do because, it may be a long-term investment in building relationships with other panelists, with listeners, it may just be an opportunity for us to spend an hour, a half hour a week having great conversation, which gets our brains going. There's all sorts of reasons you might do things that are not necessarily in dollars and cents. So don't limit your stop-start conversation to that.
It's totally okay to do things because they're fun.
Yes, absolutely.
I had a podcast for a number of years that I mostly did because it was the most fun I got to have at work. And, we did it and it was great and we really enjoyed it. And then there was a time when we stopped doing it. And, going back to what you were saying, Chip, about sunk costs, I have actually started practicing quitting things because I don't quit at things. And so, like, if I get halfway into a book and it's just not working for me, I'm making myself quit, and I'm not gonna read it any longer. Or same thing with a podcast. If I'm in the middle of a podcast and I'm like, this isn't doing it for me, skip, go on to the next one. And so those are like just some ways that I'm trying to practice letting things go rather than having to finish everything.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And actually, it reminds me of a story. I think I told this on the Agency Leadership podcast recently, but Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book, he had a very similar point that he made in there. And he said, if you're doing something and you're not finding value in it, just stop.
Yeah.
And so that's when I put down his book. So.
Yeah.
That is so good. And I love that too, because I've always been a little bit suspectful of the 4-hour work week or whatever. But what I do think that is good about that idea is that we do waste a lot of time. Sure. I mean, we waste so much time, and there's diminishing returns, right? So like, where are those diminishing returns? So I was just thinking about while you were talking, I wrote down, you have to think about the effort level something takes you, the work level, like how much work, hours, whatever, the connection level, like who is it getting you closer to or whatever. And then the energy level, like, is it sucking the life out of you? And if it's sucking the life out of you, you have to quit. It's the same thing with bad clients. If they suck the life out of you, fire them. I mean, it's
right.
And that's another thing you can stop in the new year, by the way. We can talk about clients. But,
I love firing clients. And if you're a client watching this, I'm sorry.
I don't love it. I'm going to be honest. I hate firing clients, but sometimes it's necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to fire clients. You have to fire employees. You have to fire vendors.
You have to fire yourself sometimes.
Yes.
Yes.
Say more about
Let's
that, Cami.
talk about that. Like, sometimes you have to fire yourself. You're like, I'm like kind of terrible at this thing. Hire somebody to help you do it the right way. Fire yourself.
The other thing is, sometimes I'm really great at something, but me doing it is keeping the whole organization from growing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't fire myself, then we're stuck at this point because I have to keep being the one who reviews all the copy or the one who does the design reviews or whatever it is. And me doing that is actually preventing the organization from growing.
Absolutely. And most of the listeners right now that are on this show are agency owners.
Yes.
And I always tell the agency owners they need to get themselves right first.
Yes.
Before they can focus. So I have agency owners come to me and say, I'm buried in this and we're busy with that and I'm not getting the profits I need. I'm like, slow down. Figure out what your role is. Mm-hmm. What is your role today? What do you want it to be? And let's map that out first. Then you can worry about all the other pieces. But there's no reason to take on all the risk and stress of owning your own agency if you're not doing the kind of work that you want to do, working the number of hours that you want, and getting the financial returns that you expect. That's what you need to build first, and then worry about everything else.
Yeah. And I'm going to also say, you, as the front runner for your company, you may be the face for your company. You may not, by the way. That could be a thing too, but that's a different story. But also thinking about your marketing and all of that, I think we get overwhelmed by that. You know, we feel like it's like, it's time to get this done. We have to get this done. I have to be visible. And I agree. And in fact, I teach people how to be visible in their agencies. So I 100% agree with that. But on the other hand, if you have not figured out the least smallest way possible that you can get it done. So one of the things I say is people say, oh, you're such a great marketer. I'm like, no, I'm extremely lazy. That's really the thing, So I want to be able to do one thing and then use that thing to leverage everything else, So I do one live stream a week. I cut it up into small pieces. I get one appearance somewhere. I reuse it like in a multiple number of different ways. I was on Good Morning America last week. I don't know if you saw that, but that was awesome in a way, but it was also a teaching moment, because the reason I got on there is because I grew this community, and that's what I talk about all the time is grow your community, invest in your community, and it will give back to you when it's necessary. So it's a proof of that. So then I used it for that. Look, I'm like, here's how it works, and here's how you can do it too. It's not because I'm famous that this happened. So I think you got to look for those opportunities and leverage them. I mean, an email will go out next week about that. We're not done yet. I mean, this thing's going to roll for a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, one of the things that we need to be thinking about too, when we're talking about stopping things and the year ahead, is when we're doing that kind of strategic planning with our clients, we need to stop things when we come up with the new idea for them too, right? Because this is why scope creep eats so many agencies alive, because agency people love to be creative for the most part. And so they have ideas, they pitch the client on the idea, but they don't charge them more and they don't take something else away. And so when you're doing strategic planning with your clients, you also need to have this concept in mind, because if you're taking on additional work, and as exciting as it may be, if you're not stopping something else, you're killing your profit margin, unless you can charge extra for that idea. But we all know how hard it is to get clients to actually pay more for incremental new ideas.
Mm-hmm. So
I think that idea of what you're procrastinating on works in that realm too. There's always some amount of what you're doing for a client that you're like, I have to do this again. I need to write their social media posts or whatever it is that's just like a drag.
End of the month reporting.
Yeah, right. Cut it. Just don't do it anymore. Stop doing it. And you'd be amazed, like the end of month reporting, you can turn whatever 10 or 12 page report you're turning in at the end of the month into a 1-page thing, and your client's going to like it better and your life is going to get better.
Absolutely.
They won't even read it if it's 12 pages. That's the funny part. You do this big thing and then nobody looks at it. You spent like an entire day on it. No. Again, lazy, right? So when I was actually back working at a job, one of my first ones, way back in the Stone Ages when they had slides and for photos.
Yeah.
we were in a trade association, and all of the members would call us and say, hey, do you have a slide? We manufactured housing, a really nice mobile home. Look, we had these really beautiful pictures, and they'd call us, and my job was to go to the back room, pull out these big binders and look painstakingly through the binders for like the perfect photo. You couldn't send like a palm tree to Arizona and
right,
so forth.
Right.
And so that was my job. I'd go back there. It's not my only job. It was like a really annoying part of the job. And so I kept doing that. And I finally said to my boss, can we get these scanned? And he goes, how much would that cost? I'm like, I don't know. I'll find out. So I went and I did the research and it was kind of expensive, but I said, hey, if we do that, then we can put them all onto a DVD and then we can sell the DVD and it'll pay for us getting them scanned. And then I won't have to go to the back room.
Yes,
exactly. $50. I didn't say that part, but because it was horrible. I mean, afterwards I'd have to go and, talk to them and say, can you FedEx that back? I'd have to beg them to send it back. I mean, it was just awful. So I just think, think lazy. I think it's entrepreneurial, but really, how can you make it the simplest way? And what system can you put in place to shortcut it? So solve your own problems in your own agency. I think it's really important.
I love that. And to me, a great way to find some of these things to stop that make processes like the one you described with the slides better is to show someone else how to do it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you bring on a new employee or something like that, that's where you discover these things, because they say, well, why are you doing it this way? Right. And so then as you're explaining it, you're like, we've always done it that way, which is my least favorite answer. Anytime I ask someone why, and they say, well, we've always done it that way. It's a terrible answer.
There's a meatloaf story about that. You know, like you went to your mom's house and they cut
Yeah.
off the ends of the meatloaf. Have you heard that one in the pan?
Yeah.
And somebody finally said, "Why do we do that, Mom?" Like they said, "Well, we used to just have a smaller pan, so we had to cut." And they're like, "Oh
Yeah.
my God, we've been doing this for decades because you had a small pan once, you know?"
Right.
Or I guess it was a turkey. I forget what it was. Some piece of meat that they cut off on the ends to make
Yeah,
it fit
so
the
if
pan.
you see something that you think doesn't make sense, show it to someone else. Have them take a fresh look at it, because I mean, frankly, that's half of what I seem to do in my own role as an agency consultant, is just say, well, why are you doing it that way? That doesn't make sense, and walk me through it, right? So it's that process of talking about the steps you take that can often uncover either things you can stop entirely, or at least portions of a process that you can stop and save time.
Or things that you believe that only you can do. Like there are things that this happens. I mean, it happens to me too. I'm thinking, well, I'm the only one who can do this because I'm the only one who has access to this specific thing. And I'm like, let's see. How can I get access to somebody else? It's called a password. I don't know anything like LastPass. It's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, the secret is none of us are indispensable, right? We all think we are, but ourselves or individual team members, they can all be replaced. So if you've got a team member who wants to leave, or you think they ought to leave, don't panic. You can come up with a solution. There's nobody who's irreplaceable.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that we I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead, Brad.
On that same vein,
I'm stopping.
one of the things that I do at the end of the year with my clients is I plan vacations for them for the next year. So in December, I want you to put all your vacation for the next year on your calendar now. Book it in, because there's never going to be a good time to take it. There's always going to be a deadline coming up. And so if you book it now, you just have to go. You just take that vacation. And it reinforces that not being indispensable thing, that when the vacation comes up, no matter what's happening in the agency, you go on vacation, people are going to take care of it. And you'd be surprised how much your team grows when you just take off and don't be there to save them from everything.
It is absolutely amazing how people.
We like to feel like we're important, though, right?
We do.
We like to feel like we're not like. So one of the hardest things I had when I first started having staff, like I have employees, right, is that feeling of like, well, what do I do then? Like, am I like, now I'm not really all that important? Not important. That's not even the word. Is like, are they going to think I'm just like this lazy person that doesn't do anything? It's just like, will they respect you? That's kind of was my thought. You know, will they continue to respect you?
So when people ask me that question, or if I'm having that conversation with a business owner, I'm like, well, first of all, if you can make the kind of salary you're making and work like 25 hours a week, you're my hero. Like, that's the goal. That's what we're all trying to accomplish. It would be great if that was the situation that you're in, that you could run a really successful business and not work all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's probably not the case. We're probably going to find some things for you to do. But if that were the case, let's celebrate. Like, you won. You won in the game of life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think part of it is that agency owners just aren't clear with themselves what they want their own role to be, and there's not a one size fits all answer here either. And that's one of the challenges that I think agency owners have, is they read a lot of the things that folks like us write and others, and they sit there and they say, well, so and so says that I need to have this percentage of my time devoted to this and that, and you know. And those may be guidelines, they may be helpful, but you have to keep in mind that it's coming from the perspective of that individual and how they approach things, the kind of things they like to do. You may be an agency owner who would prefer to be in the creative and client service side of things, and that's fine. You just need to find someone else to help you with the pieces that you're not paying attention to. But this whole idea that you have to take yourself out of client work is ridiculous. I mean, it's my preferred approach, but it may not be yours, and that's fine.
So, Chip, do you have examples of agency leaders that have stayed in the client work and grown their agency?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it depends. Now, I will say it depends a little bit on the kind of agency that it is, right? So there are agencies that are better suited to that than others. There are also models that you use that may be better suited to it than others. But here's part of the problem. A lot of people think that to grow your agency, you have to keep increasing revenue and keep getting more clients and all those kinds of things.
Right.
But when I think about growing my agency, I'm thinking about growing in terms of how much I'm putting in my pocket as the agency owner, right? And there are plenty of 2-people agencies that generate far more income for the owners than 500-person agencies,
no
right?
doubt
So,
about that.
so we need to lose this idea that we're growing top-line revenue. And part of the problem is we look at things like the Inc. 5000 list and that kind of stuff, and these astronomical growth rates and revenue numbers. And we're like, oh, I want to be on that list. Why? Why? What is it actually doing for you to be on that list other than stroking your ego
I
for
was going to
48
say one
hours?
word to that is ego. And I do think that is, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I mean, we are agency owners, and there's a reason we step down on our own. There's a little bit of ego involved. I mean, there just is.
Sure.
And so in order to get to that point, but I agree completely. You want to build a business that you like to be a part of. Like if you wake up in the morning, you're not like, oh my gosh, I have to go do this thing again.
Right.
Like then you might as well just go get a job, because I mean, that's the truth of the matter. I mean, at least in a job, you have one boss.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I mean, they might be a good one, but you have at least one boss, right? And then that's, so if you have a job, I mean, in an agency, you have multiple masters. I mean, it's just how it works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's mind-boggling to me how miserable some agency owners will make themselves and think that they don't have control over it, because you don't have total control. You can't just wave a magic wand and have things change overnight, but you can change your direction by figuring out how you want to spend your time, what you want your business to be doing, what kind of clients you want to work with, all of those different things.
Yeah.
On the idea of quitting things, and going back to maybe what you were saying, Chip, about listening to people like us, maybe one thing that you want to do next year is listen to fewer voices. And I do think that reflecting on my career, there was a time in my career when I read a lot of business books and I listened to a lot of advice, and I was trying to learn the right way to do things, right? And at this point in my career, much like you were saying, Chip, I don't really believe that there's a right way to do things, right? But you're going to have to figure out the right way for you. And if you've gotten to the point where you've done the basics, you've read all the books that are the ones that everybody tells you to read, or, you've read 10, let's just put it that way. Maybe it's time to step back and say, okay, how do I want to do this? And you might still need an advisor to help you to feel confident in that you're not jumping off a cliff somewhere, but thinking more about what is inside you and what knowledge and wisdom you have that you can apply to the year coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And also, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Cameron.
I was just going to say, I agree to a certain degree there. I would say that we definitely do that, but I think there's a learn, apply, think kind of process that goes on. Like, so, we can get addicted to learning as a way to avoid getting things done.
Yes.
It's a thing, I have it. So, you'll get into like, oh, what am I gonna do? I'll spiral into it. I love to learn, I'm like there with my pen and my pencil, I'm like, what can I learn today? I mean, that's just sort of the way I am. And I feel like if you've arrived and then you're finished, right? So that's sort of my feeling, but I can hear what you're saying, Brad. And so I do think that you have to like trust your own genius once in a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Step back and reflect about what's working and what's not working, and what's giving you energy and what's taking energy from you, and what is your intuition telling you that you need to do, and then maybe take those ideas to an advisor and talk through them. I'm not saying just make stuff up out of your head and go flinging out into the world, but start from the inside out as opposed to the outside in.
Yeah, I think there's a number of good points there. I mean, I think the idea that it's cyclical is important, right? So and so it depends on where you're at in that stage, how many voices, what kinds of things, all that kind of thing. But there is that point where you do need to just stop and trust yourself and make a decision. A lot of times a bad decision is better than no decision.
Yes.
I always rant about, inertia-based agencies, right? Ones that are, as I said earlier, doing things because that's how we've always done them, right? If you just allow inertia to carry forward, that's when you end up with a business that you don't like, doing things that you can't stand. And so you need to just stop and make a decision. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to keep doing this. And if you do those things, you'll be in a better place. But I I do think that you need to sort of go through those different cycles as far as gathering information and talking to people. And I don't know about you guys, but the biggest challenge that small agencies seem to have is that they don't have people to talk to, right? And so they're watching videos like this and making decisions just based on this, but they're not talking things through because their significant other is tired of hearing about it. They can't talk to employees because they know that their check is signed by them, so they're never going to give full on it. So that you do need to find somebody, whether it's a peer or a consultant or just somebody who can help you to talk things through, but then trust your gut to make the decision at the end.
Yeah. In fact, that's why I was doing this marketing thing this year, because I've got this visibility accelerator I'm going to do later in the year. And that's because people need to actually do things rather than like talk about doing things. I feel like that's a huge problem for us as an agency owner, that we will talk about it, and no decision is just as much a decision as a decision.
Absolutely.
So your decision to sit and think about it for 2 years is not going to get you anywhere down the road, right? So you have to just start doing things sometimes and seeing kind of what works.
It's funny. In the pandemic, I don't get these opportunities to do things, but for about the last year, I've been itching to look out at an audience of agency owners and say, how many of you are in the middle of redesigning your website? Right? We're always in the middle of these things and we never finish them. So what do we need to do to get those things finished?
Over the line. Oh my gosh. Finish one project first, please.
Yeah. And we also need to figure out, are they even worth doing? Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, website redesigns are probably one of the dumbest things that not just agencies, but most of our clients do, because we're bored with them, but nobody else is, because they're not seeing it every day. Right? If it's not your homepage,
if it's getting leads going for you, you can fine. But if it's not, you probably need to change it. But if it's working, don't fix it.
Well, and the reality is most agencies aren't getting their leads from their website anyway. People are going there after they've already heard about it, just to validate them or to get contact information or look at bios or something like that. I mean, most agencies, with the exception of some of the higher volume ones, are not actually generating leads based on the content on their website. It's somewhere secondary in the business development process. I mean, frankly, there are some clients that'll sign up without ever looking at your website.
Oh, for sure.
All the time.
Right? So
all the time.
They're like, you have a website?
Oh, good.
and yet you spent God knows how many hours and how much money on designing it, building it, and then redesigning it and rebuilding it over and over and over again. So... Well, the thing we can't do over and over again is just keep talking, because we're coming up against the end of our half-hour time slot. And I am, as you all know, religious about sticking to that time limit, because I think that most folks really don't want to listen to us for more than 30 minutes.
Probably not. In fact, they're probably already all gone. Sorry, guys.
Well, it is what it is. But, we've at least had a good and productive time, I think, here talking about it. And I think we've created some good content for listeners, both live and in future replays. If you're looking to watch any replays of this or any other episode, just go to smallagency.tv. And Cami, where can folks go if they want to learn more about you?
If they want to learn about me, they can go to any social media network at KamiChat, KamiChat. They can go to smartsocialsecrets.com, which is my online training arm, which we talk a lot about how to do a lot of this stuff. And please just reach out. I love to talk to people. Very, very responsive. So
excellent. And Brad, where should people go if they want to find you?
AnchorAdvisors.com is the easiest place to find me, or on LinkedIn, you can search up Brad Farris and you'll find me pretty easily.
Fantastic. And if you want to learn more about SAGA, just go to smallagencygrowth.com. And so with that will bring to an end this week's episode of the Small Agency Talk Show. I look forward to having both of you back as panelists, and I look forward to having all of you listeners/viewers back again soon as well. So with that, have a great weekend, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.